afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. My name is Genai. I'm your moderator for tonight's Q&A here in Woods Hole, and I want to thank you for being with us during the 29th Woods Hole Virtual Film Festival. Before we begin, I'd like to thank the dinner and a movie sponsor for tonight's film, Thank You 5, which is Casa Vallarta Restaurant, located on 70 Davis Straits Road in Falmouth, Mass. Please visit Casa Vallarta for takeout during this week's 29th Woods Hole Film Festival, which runs through Saturday, August 1st. A couple of housekeeping items. All films are eligible to receive both an audience and jury award. You can vote for audience awards for feature films in the platform. On the home image of each film, you'll see 5 stars next to the box that says watch later, and that's where you'll vote, with the number 1 being the lowest and 5 being the highest. For short films, we'll send pass holders and ticket holders further info this week about how to vote. During today's Q&A for Thank You 5, we'll speak together with the director and writer for about 45 minutes, and then we'll open it up to questions from the audience. Please write your questions in the Q&A section, which is on the space bar at the bottom of your screen. I'll then pass along the questions for response. And please mute your audio and enjoy. Thanks for being with us. So welcome. Tonight we have Reid Estreicher and we have Michael Barnard, co-collaborators, writer, director, actors in Thank You 5. And for those of you who haven't seen the film, I don't know how many of you have, but it's an improvised comedy about a bunch of struggling thespians who come together to stage a play called Prelude to a Tradition. And Kurt, who's got the ponytail it looks like, plays director, Reid does, Kurt McAbbott, and then Michael plays George. So gentlemen, I'll let you take the floor. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your collaboration and how this project came to you?
Okay, where to start?
So Reid and I met taking classes at Second City in Chicago in 2011.
Yeah.
And we became friends pretty quickly, taking classes there. Within the first couple of weeks, we started meeting outside of class to hang out and collaborate on things. And over the course of a few years, we were writing together and performing together in Chicago, and we started working on a screenplay together that we kind of beat our heads against the wall for about 2 years trying to get it made. And we just kind of found that, you know, trying to make our first feature with the script that we had written was kind of a little bit outside of our grasp. So we kind of retooled and thought, well, what's something that we could conceivably do all on our own? And so we kind of went back to the drawing board and we started pitching around this idea of a movie that's set all in a theater about a bunch of actors. And, you know, we just kind of started throwing ideas around and developed this project.
There's something smaller that we could do ourselves. It's the original film, to Mike's point, was much bigger, and it just was too much. We bit off more than we could chew from a production perspective. So to do it ourselves, we just had to really go back to something smaller. And actually, we shot at Theater Wit. So everything was on location in Chicago, all Chicago cast, all Chicago crew. Shout out to everybody in the film. You did an amazing job. It was an amazing experience, but we shot everything at Theater Wit, and it was a really unique location because we had the theater that we could actually film in. But then there were the other parts of the theater that they allowed us to film in as well. So a huge thank you to David Wexler for letting us film in the other places when nobody was using it.
Yeah, they just
And
gave
are
us
you
the
both ensemble members of Theater Wit?
Are we both what? I'm sorry.
Ensemble members of Theater Wit?
No, it was just a place that we came across. We were just scouting locations and we're like, let's just pop our heads into different theaters. And well, I think first we just like looked at pictures online. We're like, well, let's just go and see if they'll let us shoot here. So we just walked in off the street one day and we're like, hey, you know, we're working on this project. Do you rent out your theater for, you know, films? And they were like, yeah, sure. And so we worked it out with them, and there you go.
Well, it worked out very well location-wise. I wanted to ask you, how much of the film actually was improvised? And I should say the aspects of the play within the film.
Oh, okay. So that was not improvised. That was the only part, because the way we went about it was that we felt as though that couldn't be improvised because it needed to be consistent.
Right.
So yeah, the play Prelude to a Tradition, which is a hard title even to say, that play does exist. It was written, we wrote it.
Actually, huge shout credit to Mike. He wrote. I was like over a night. Or what did you write?
No, it was a couple weeks.
Oh, sorry.
But like, yeah, I basically wrote like a play, or I don't know, like maybe within the span of like a month or something.
Every like dramatic trope you could put into a play.
Yeah, and the idea was that we wanted to have the actual play not be perfect because that would kind of fit, I guess, with the character of Kurt. So I just wrote one draft and was like, all the mistakes that are in it are going to be in it, because then when we're actually like improvising and rehearsing it live on camera, the actors are going to stumble across these mistakes that are still left in there. And
yeah,
so outside of the actual written text itself of the play, I would say 90% of everything else you see in the movie was improvised by all.
Was improvised, not scripted. Okay, yeah. Well, I was going to say that was very impressive because with your background at Second City and understanding comedy by definition is a struggle. And there are so many facets of comedy, whether we're talking about parody or satire or self-deprecating humor, physical humor, one-liners. You seem to get so many aspects of it into the script that I found that it was extremely impressive.
The cast was unbelievably talented, and they were all local Chicago comics. I think Emily Zawissa moved to Dallas, but everybody else is still local.
And which character did Emily play?
Emily played the part of Heather.
Heather, yes, yeah. Right. The Heather and Scott line was wonderful.
Super talented, and everybody played, I think, really well off each other. And it was a comment that Mike and I have talked about this a lot, where it's like sometimes you get people that are performing together, especially in the world of improv. They start to try to they not on purpose, but they ape each other's style. They start to kind of sound the same, and everybody
mimic each other.
Yeah, and then everybody really maintained like their own comedic voice or their own character voice throughout the production, which was pretty remarkable. The dialogue was that the actors spoke, minus the script that was written for the play, was not improvised. So, yeah, so we actually crafted it. It was like we laid out kind of point to point as far as like start, what's A, what's Z, and what is it supposed to be in between as far as the setup. But the actual dialogue all came from the actors themselves, the comedians themselves.
Right. Yeah. I was actually going to comment on the casting. You talk about the actors, that everybody maintained their own pitch, so to speak. But the casting was really quite impressive. Everybody did have a unique voice. I did want to ask you specifically, Reid, about your character, because your character, I think, had the greatest arc. What was really special about this film for me was the last half hour. And Michael, I think you could speak to that too, playing George, who finally admits he's never going to be famous, and you apologize for your inadequacies. Tell me about the writing about your character specifically, who played, not only did you write and direct it, but you acted and directed in the play within the film. Could you follow that?
Yeah.
Very, very meta. The journey of Kurt is very, I think it's something that's relatable to people. Like you get some success, it goes to your head and you start to act errant and just rude. And I think the part at the end where he apologizes for his inadequacies, I think is like a really very sweet moment for him realizing his shortcomings. And it's like, you can very easily point at the world around you for what's going wrong, but a lot of times if you just look inward, you realize that it might be coming from yourself. And I think that at least I hope that comes out towards the end of the film. I would say that for all the characters, we had a very specific, almost like a 5-point scene structure that we created for the character, where it's like, this character you should feel this way about at the beginning of the film, part of the way through, maybe there's a turn, and maybe you feel differently at the end of the film versus where you started. And those choices were very deliberate. Like the character Scott, played by John T. O'Brien. John's an awesome guy, so freaking talented.
A wonderful actor.
So funny and great delivery in so many of his lines. But like we had a very specific role for him to play, and that like the feeling that you have for him in the beginning No spoiler. I don't want to.
You're supposed to hate him by the end.
Yeah,
basically.
basically. So it's like we had communicated this stuff to the actors, and the way that we wrote the characters was like a clustering exercise, where it was like we write the name, and then all the like, what are the character traits of these people? Where are they from? Did they have parents? Are their parents still married? Did they come from generational wealth? Did they come from nothing? Where did they go to school? Did they go to school? Like, where did they work? Like, really got into some very finite detail that never made its way into the film, but I think helped significantly inform the actors as to what they were supposed to portray when they were in front of the camera.
Well, I'm glad you shared that, because it's a very competitive process to get a film into the Woods Hole Film Festival, and it was very clear that your characters had a very strong inner life. Not only did the characters have an inner life, but the actors understood where they came from and where they were going. And in particular, there was that very nice moment with a couple of the guys, I think it was Bobby, and they weren't sure about Jenna and her, where, you know, if she was homeless or where she lived or whatever. And it was just really, really special, touching.
I think that was, I mean, again, this was stuff that we wrote because, you know, again, all the dialogue was improvised, but we wrote so much about backstory and about the characters and about what we wanted out of every scene, like what the want was, like what needs to be accomplished in every scene. And so scenes like that was all stuff that like was in our heads, where as directors, we're like, we're going to shoot this scene, and we're talking to the guys and we're like, you know what, like at this point, you guys don't really even know that much about her. You're all kind of infatuated with her, but you don't know her that well. And so that was kind of the inspiration for how that scene kind of went the way it went.
And the dialogue was so real. You know, you felt like you were a fly on the wall. So,
exactly.
And the delivery was just marvelous, as was the scene, I think it was Peter and Alex at the end, where he goes to finally give her the cup of soup, and Joe versus a volcano, and he gets this whole spiel, and he finally realizes he likes her, and the film's about to end, and she says something like, I just took an Ambien. I love what you did. Could you do that again?
Yeah,
you know, it was just a really wonderful, wonderful film. Tell me how, you know, we're in the middle of this COVID pandemic, you know, and as filmmakers, do you want to talk a little bit about your film and how have you been able to get it out there in other festivals, and where do you see it going from here?
Yeah, we have. So we've had 10 official selections. One festival was pushed to 2021. We spoke with them about, was it 2021? We talked to them about, and this is something similar that we talked about before we actually rolled on this, which was the filmmaking community is very small as it is, especially the indie filmmaking community. And there's something very valuable about being able to be there in person. And so we're hoping to be able to at least get out and attend all these festivals that we've gotten into this past year in person next year. Granted, there's assuming that COVID is not a problem, you know, film is like, it's almost like the cultural microbiome for who we are. And so I feel like that needs to flourish again in a really big way. And that can happen once you're one-on-one with people and you're, you know, interacting and networking. So like I did, 10 official selections. We've had 6 nominations.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. We've had Best Actor nominations, Best Director nominations, Best Picture nominations, Best Comedy nominations, which is amazing and very humbling. We did pick up a Best Picture nomination in the first film fest that we went to, which was great. And then we also recently won the grand prize for Best Comedy at the Faded Awards.
Oh, well deserved. And I think something that really, I think resonated with the audiences is the last, I guess, 30 minutes really of the film, where you're all at Duffy's restaurant, you know, and everybody's kind of gone their separate ways, and there's a few of you there. And Michael, maybe you want to talk about this, because specifically it was really your character that led that round table. You know, and for many of us who are actors, there was that one really relatable scene where Emily, who played Heather, said, I epically failed as an actor in New York. And, you know, why don't people say to you, if you're good at something, why don't you just follow your passion instead of why don't you just be an actor? And so I think there were real life lessons to be learned in this film.
Yeah, so so if there's a thesis state of the film, it's definitely in that chunk. I think when we were conceiving the film, there are a lot of movies about art and acting and theater, And when we were looking at the ones that currently exist, like sometimes there are ones that are kind of about like high school age or community theater, and the films are funny because they're all about like these delusions of grandeur. Or a lot of times they're kind of like showbiz movies about people who have already kind of made it and like what that's like. So we kind of looked at it, we're like, well, let's talk about characters that are kind of like where we are, where we're kind of like in the middle, people still trying to just break through. And so that last chunk is really kind of about that, about like, well, what is it like that keeps bringing us back? Like, what is it that makes people keep going and doing it even when you feel like you epically fail, even when you're in this show that goes off the rails and you look out in the audience, there's only 5 people there. And so it's like, what is it that gets people to keep coming back and doing it? And so, so I think that's the thing that I think resonates with people, especially people who are in the arts. And we've heard from people all over, not just people who are involved in theater, but people involved in music and, you know, in other facets where they're like, yeah, you know, it's my passion and I love doing it. But at this point, like, you know, I keep pursuing it, but I don't know where I'm going, but yet I just keep going and going and going. So yeah, I think, and I think the other thing is that I think everybody who's in the festival, I think they understand that whatever project you're working on is kind of everything at the time that you're doing it.
As you so, I don't know, eloquently mentioned character style, you said you're never really done, which I thought was really, really great. But it is one of the few professions, as you mentioned, that you can just kind of put your toe in the water in. You can't do that, I think, as you said, as an accountant or an astronaut, but
Yeah.
so that really was nice. I know we're going to open this up a little bit to audience questions, so feel free to, we're waiting for some questions, type them in and we will certainly get them out to the filmmakers. I'm multitasking here and looking at this screen. So as we're waiting for questions, I wanted to know how much of that last portion of the film was written. I mean, was that written prior to writing the entire text, the script, or did you come up with that later as kind of a, I don't know.
Well, it's really funny because
an ending to the ending.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's really funny because that last chunk where I'm just kind of like talking, it was written and it wasn't like, we knew we were going to do it and we knew there was going to be this big wrap up, but we didn't really pre-plan all of what it was going to entail. We had like some bullet points, I think, of what we wanted to cover. At one point, interestingly enough, we were doing some rewrites and we're like rewriting to kind of accommodate that. And we're about to, you know, we're getting closer to production and we're looking at everything. And I'm telling Reid, like, we've got so many characters, a bunch of unknown actors. Why do we have so many people? I should not be in this. And I was like, we should cut this character out. I should like, and you know, we've got enough going on. And Reid was like, well, that's not going to work because there's a point we're trying to make with this film. And as the writer and the director, it's like, you should really be the person to try to like bring it home. So yeah, basically on the day it helped being the writer because then we're sitting around that table and I'm basically trying to say everything that I felt about why we were making the film, like what I kind of felt like people should take away from it. Obviously, when like, we would cut, I would just look at Reid and be like, did I say anything that made sense? But I mean, it was cobbled together from several takes of kind of an actual genuine conversation that Emily and I were having.
Yeah.
Right, and you know, a little bit of a shout out to your editor because the editing in this film was absolutely fabulous, as was the score. You did a lot with music too, but the editing was really superb, very clean. How long did it take to make this film?
5 years.
5 years.
Oh, did it really?
Yeah.
Oh, and then did you raise money for the project in the process? Did you get a reel together?
No, we did this all ourselves. That was, you know, the film that Mike mentioned at the top is a rom-com that we put together called Third Wheel, and it was just too big to do ourselves. And again, it's like, how do you get somebody to give you money to make a movie if you've never made a movie? It's like a very odd place to be in if you're like, hey, I can do this and we can do it well, but you don't have it established anywhere. It's like, why would I ever trust you with funding to do this? Like, you're insane. And so we just, again, we went back and it was like, how do we do this ourselves? How can we prove that we can do this? And that was really the impetus behind the project. And it came out like, the end of the film is I'm not saying this because Mike says it's my favorite part of the film. I think
That's mine too.
It brings everything home. The last monologue that George makes, and again, it's like regardless of where you are in what industry, I think it really resonates to people that it's like, it's okay to not beat yourself up for not being further along in your career than you are. And there's something about appreciating the journey of hard work that I think can resonate with people if you take a step back and you just think about it. I couldn't have been more thrilled at the end of the film. I mean, just everything across the board, the way it left, and we've had some really, really sweet, some really great feedback about it.
Well, I think the both of you collaborate very well, so I hope there's another film down the pipe.
We do too.
Yeah. Yeah, to Reid's point, it's just kind of like this was a passion project because we really wanted to make a film and we wanted to make a film together, but also it really is just something where it's like, this is what Thank You 5 is what we can do with literally nothing, because we just took it all out of our own pockets and just did everything.
Yep.
And took it all on ourselves. And so, yeah, so hopefully that leads to things down the road where we can expand on, where we started and just build from there.
Right.
Can we talk about this?
There's certainly a lot of, actory films out there. We had one last year, a little bit similar to this, smaller ensemble, smaller cast with Jeff Daniels. But I think what really made this film so special is that how you brought it full circle at the end of the film. We didn't like the character of Scott, and we liked him even less at the end. He was the quintessential Cad, but we understood him at least.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's not easy to do. We didn't empathize him, but we just understood that's the way he was. And so you didn't devalue him by doing that. You just really wrote him. I mean, you didn't beef him up, you didn't embellish him in any way, but the characters were all very real, and that's not easy to do.
I think that was important too, because especially in films about like theater, in the theater world, sometimes it's like the focus is on the environment, where it's like the audition process or the whatever, like just the tropes that find their way into a lot of those films. And it's like, that's not, I think this goes back to like the Teachers of Second City and some of the other projects that we've been involved in, which is like, if you make it about the relationship of the characters, you get something very real and also very dynamic. And the comedy is born from the relationship of the characters, not from like trying to be funny. And I think that there's moments in there that got, like Kurt's rant when he gets mad and blows up at everybody.
Which is my favorite part, by the way.
There's a part where he yells at Warren, who's played like Theo Capel, who's amazingly talented guy.
Yes.
But he kind of loses his mind and just doesn't even know what to say. And it's like,
is that about the
So on the night of the dress rehearsal, they call it quits and all the actors are sitting in the auditorium and Kurt comes out center stage and basically says like, I'm out of here. So it's the night before the show opens.
Yeah.
And he comes out and he berates all of them and says like, you don't take me seriously. I'm not going to take you seriously,
Yes.
And the part that Reid's talking about is at one point, he's so angry and he directs his anger at the character of Warren, and he's so flabbergasted that he's deadly serious, but yet it becomes funny because the rage is just so impotent and he has nowhere to put it, and so it's like, it's a very tense scene, but you still get laughs from that tension.
Yes.
Because he's just so pent up.
To your point, Reid, if you work inside out, which is the way you did, comedy and laughter is a byproduct of that. So, I mean, this could almost be a little bit of a screenwriting lecture class, because I think that's a testament to your strong writing and the homework that you did, to develop these wonderful characters. Well, I'm encouraging folks we have a lot of shy viewers tonight. We don't always get a lot of questions, but if anyone would like to ask Reid or Michael a question, please do so now. Otherwise, I'll bring it back to you guys. Is there anything in particular you wanted to say or share? Or how about the title? How did you come up with Thank You 5?
Oh, that's an industry term. Yeah.
Well, yeah, it was like a thing where we were like kicking around, just like, well, what are some theater terms that that could be the title, and I think we threw around a ton, and I don't know, I don't remember how we came up with it. I know we were just like sitting in a Starbucks,
It's like writing out titles.
yeah, and we're just writing them out, and then we kind of were like, thank you five, and then we got stuck on that, and it's like, was it thank you, uh, FIVE, thank you, numeral five, thank you, comma five. Yeah, we kind of went through all these numerations, then we just settled on thank you five as it is.
Yeah, thank you five, and it's said in the film, 5 minutes before Curtin, the stage director or the stage manager, will come back and say 5 minutes to Curtin, and the cast is to respond thank you five, so the curtain doesn't go up and there's no one on stage, which has happened, which is why that's a thing in the theater world.
Call and response.
Yeah, absolutely. I would probably, a couple of things. I would want to say thank you, a huge thank you, one to Woods Hole for having us. This has been an absolute amazing journey, to say the least. But I also would like to say a big thank you to the cast and the crew. It was very small. We worked crazy hours. It was a SAG ultra low budget film, but we had to work the hours in this because we shot on location. We had to work when we could work. And we had crazy things happen. The Stanley Cup, the Blackhawks won the Stanley Cup, and we completely shut down our filming because it was so nuts outside that the audio was bleeding.
Right.
Yeah, the audio.
You were over on Belmont, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and so they had this big parade go down Belmont, and just also like the crazy shooting schedule that we had from Sunday into Monday into Tuesday, and just we had.
I was going to ask you the set that Logan built, the actor Logan built. Was that a set then that they were using at Theater Wit, or did you build that for your film?
Yes, so that was something. I mean, shout out to the Griffin Theater Company for letting us basically co-opt the thing, because what happened was like when we went to David Wexler at Theater Wit and we're like, hey, can we shoot in your space? He's like, yeah, cool, fine. Just want to let you know though that there's going to be a show that's going to be in there from this date to this date, and we're like, that's great, because like we'll just work with it, and not even really knowing what the show was even going to be. So ultimately, it worked out great. But yes, so we were able to shoot in an empty stage for a short period of time, and then we had to break from filming for I think 2 weeks. And when we came back to resume filming, the set was there.
Which also too, so when Mike wrote Prelude to a Tradition, say that 5 times fast, good Lord.
All right.
Yeah, when he wrote that, it was originally done in a diner.
Okay,
and the reason,
as you said.
Yeah, the reason that it was done in a diner was because when we talked to Wexler, he's like, yeah, they're going to build a set and it's going to be a diner. And we're like, oh, great. So we can
that was my fault, actually, is because he was like, there's going to be a play in there. And I looked on their website to what play it was. And I thought it was going to be, I can't remember what the name of it was. It was a Lanford Wilson play. But I looked it up and I'm like, oh, this takes place in a diner. And so, but then it turns out that was not the play that was going in that theater.
Right. So when the thing.
Maybe Callie's Folly. I don't know.
Yeah, so we went back in, and we did tour the set before we started shooting. So we were kind of given a heads up in advance. Like we went in and we're like, oh, this is not what we thought it was going to be. So then we kind of just thought like, well, we'll roll with it.
Well, any thoughts of converting this into any kind of stage play? And that's a question that comes from Jay, our producer here.
We've had a lot of crazy conversations. I always thought it'd be really funny to try to actually put up Prelude to a Tradition on its own, like to actually do the play within the film as a play and see how people reacted to it, to see if they thought it was terrible or whatever, and just, I don't know, try to do it for real. I think that would be kind of amusing, but no, there has not been any conversation about adapting the movie.
Right. We have a question here from an anonymous attendee. They wanted to get a little more information about the musical score and how you went about funding that and finding the music for your film.
So there are only a couple pieces in the film that we didn't write, and those were things that we licensed for the film. Then the other things that were like, so the opening night chaos after Kurt has his blow up and leaves, that's like an 11-minute piece of music. We scored that. for the film, which is I put a piano over there and a bunch of stuff. Actually, huge shout out to Spitfire Audio because they make unbelievable synth products that they sample so much music, and it's by like the top like musicians in the world. It's incredible. And so we're able to have like basically like a full orchestral movement at your fingertips with that software. And it was Logic Pro, and then just the plugins from Spitfire Audio. So we were able to create some pretty amazing things.
So it sounds like you did a lot of that on your own. You didn't have somebody to do that.
Yeah, it's the composer is listed under a pseudonym in the credits, but it was actually mostly Reid because he
Are you a musician, Reid?
Not a good one, but if you give me enough time in an electric program that I can like tweak things after I screw them up miserably while I play them live, then I can fake it.
Well, there you go. That's just another hat to add to your already talented gifts.
Thanks.
Let's see. Anything else you want to talk about before we sort of wrap up? You're still talking to each other.
Yes, yeah, we made it through. Yeah,
absolutely.
It's interesting. Like I said, we've known each other for a long time now, almost 10 years, and yeah, this whole thing started because we started writing one screenplay together, and we're like, well, let's make this, and then we kind of just over time we're like, all right, well, whatever it is we do in the film industry, like, we're just gonna do it together, and we're gonna just kind of keep collaborating and working. And I mean, we fell into a pretty good groove because, like, honestly, before the chat started, you asked us, like, did one person lean more towards writing or more towards directing? Was one person taking the lead? And it's funny because, like, we did a few cast meetings and rehearsals before we started shooting, and that was a question from one of the actors, which is like, so who's really directing? And it was like, I mean, honestly, it is really both, because we're on the same page about a lot of things as far as like our taste, and again, since we spent so much time doing that backstory, writing, developing, I mean, we both knew the story so well that it was like, you could ask either of us any question, and I don't think our answers would be too different.
But it is difficult to direct yourself. You know, some actors have done it, but not too many.
Well, that's what made it handy, is that we could.
Yeah.
There's a reason why George and Kurt aren't really on camera together for any extended period of time.
Yeah. I did notice that when I asked you. Right. So you were able to rely on each other, it sounds like.
Yeah. Because we were spinning so many plates that sometimes it was really funny, because when it was time for Reid to stop directing and start acting, it really was kind of like, what am I doing? Yeah, it was like, I needed to be there to kind of be like, okay, here's where we are, here's what you're doing. It's like, because it's like, oh yeah, because so many things are happening that once you start to just be an actor, you do need to be brought up to speed the same as anybody else to be like, okay, like, what am I doing here? Okay, got it, and then jumping into it.
Like, shut one part of your brain off to like turn another part of it on. It was life-saving to have Mike as a counterpart in that, because Mike, I don't know how many times I was like, I don't know what we're doing. What's the scene? Where is this in the production right now? Like, walk me back to that.
It's like, you wrote it. How do you not know? It's like, I'm tired. Yeah, right.
I'm tired.
Well, we hope that you two will be a duo for a long time to come. As a mass appeal, you don't have to be an actor, writer, or director to enjoy Thank You 5. So
thank you very much. I
just want to thank you both so much. Congratulations for being part of the festival, and I hope to see it up on the big screen very soon. And this was just really a treat to have you both here.
Thank you so much.
Estreicher and Michael Barnard, thank you so much for being with us.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys.
Okay. Bye-bye, folks.